Village Romeo Board of Trustees will be held Monday, July 18, 2016 at 7 p.m. at the Romeo Community Center, 361 Morton, Romeo, Michigan 4865. Please all rise for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mike.
Edwards.
Yes.
Park.
Here.
Fowler. Melzon.
Here.
Roussel. Corno. President Sigla.
Present. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as
I'll make a motion.
support for, let me be more clear, for the regular meeting of June 20th, special meeting 28th, and closed minutes for June 20th, and closed minutes for June 28th. Sorry.
That's my motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I did a second.
Edwards.
Can I get a motion to pay the bills as presented?
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
I have quite a concern of the budget overall, since our tax bills aren't out yet, and how we're gonna generate some revenue. It seems like we're down 18 days without any revenue coming in.
He's printing them right now. That's why he's not here.
Okay, but technically they're due by the end of June, because tax bills are payable July 1st through September. So is there a reason why, for the second year in a row, they haven't been mailed out on time?
Well, I believe this year is getting used to the new computer and new software. He said he struggled with that. There wasn't any help with him.
But we
There wasn't a
paid
whole
for
lot
him to
to
have the
help.
training, right? Okay.
Yeah, but he still, it was a lot to learn. There was going from XP to Windows 10.
Is it gonna create an issue for us in the long run without the revenue coming in?
Well, we're hoping for a quick tax collection, or a quicker tax collection, which a lot of people want to pay them. Right now, we're fine, but if we go any further, it's gonna be tough. So, and I know delinquencies were an issue in regards to the water bill delinquencies that we had, along with some tool and die information that was incorrect. So there's a couple of little things.
And those must be internal
Dennis-
numbers?
Dennis was gonna be here, and I wanted him here to answer these exact questions,
Mhm.
but my priority for him right this second is getting those tax bills out immediately. So, that's, I mean, it's
Yeah, now do we,
my heart palpitates all the time.
yeah, because I have to say, like, when we had the email, he was talking about having people help stamp envelopes and doing that. I mean, we have services that, you know, you don't have to stamp 2,500 envelopes and
No,
stuff envelopes.
No, it's the stuffing part, which
Yeah.
we're gonna be working diligently on that all day.
And the other thing he was talking about were like sidewalk, you know, assessment or this, you know, that's gotta be a small piece of those. The other ones, can you
There
send
are-
out 95% and wait on 5?
There are a couple that, yeah, sidewalks.
could have done that.
Sidewalks are a few, there's just a few there, but the delinquencies, remember last year we had $186,000 in delinquent water bills? That was all coming in at the same time. I don't know what our number was this year, but it was
He's
it was
been
a lot.
busy. He's been busy.
So did the numbers not come in on the delinquent water bills on time? Or it was just a problem with him knowing what to do with those numbers? Because I
No,
know the
because the
assessment
number-
numbers
the
are
number-
done in March from the county. So I'm not sure where the delay was. It basically 3
No,
months
because-
then.
Yeah, because they also have the tax tribunal after that. So like, when we talk about our budget, needing to be done by, or out to us by what they said on, I can't remember what we changed it to or whatever. Those aren't real figures until we get it ratified through the townships after their tax tribunals, which I think is in June 1st, June 5th. Then we were also waiting for the personal property tax stuff that came in, but late, because the county was trying to figure how much we were gonna lose in the personal property tax stuff.
But the tax tribunal information, as far as I'm understanding, just because I went through that with my PRE, is
Yeah.
that the tax bill goes out, and then if I want to dispute it, it gets disputed at the end of the year. And then adjustments can be made that way at the end of the year. So I'm just looking to understand where the problem
I
lies.
thought the dispute happens in May.
So either a
and
credit if I'm owed one, or,
Yeah.
you know, if I need to go before the tribunal,
I just know that the
He's
tax
getting
bills
them
are
out
going
as quick as he can.
They're gonna be in hands by Wednesday, I'm hoping. So,
Okay.
because, hopefully you can snap them right now, right now, so. Anyway, I had to print out 149 of them. He's waiting on that, to print it out, so.
Okay, I hope so.
Edwards?
Wait a second.
Oh, sorry.
If there were any other discussion, I had one quick question on a bill, and that was, there was some vehicle repair. It's like $5,000 to a van, and I just
Yeah.
wondered what that was.
That was the Van Alstine truck, it's for the motor for a backhoe. We had to have the motor rebuilt.
Okay.
We were down, that was, yeah.
And then one quick bit, Mr. Clark, I noticed on your invoice, I didn't see any specified hours for union or for labor negotiations. I don't know if it's possible, when everything is buttoned up, if you could just calculate approximately how many hours. I just wanted it for my record.
I have the exact number, and there are
Okay.
specific bills related to each separate bargaining unit, and so, Mr. Lee has those, and you're welcome to them, or I'll send them to you, I'll have my
Yeah,
secretary.
just for my records, that's all.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Edwards?
Yes.
Carp?
Yes.
Fowler?
What do we?
Bills?
Oh, yes, okay.
Melza?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, yes.
Yes. President Sigel?
Yes. Reports and communications, Mike?
Get everything tucked away for the year end. I got the Form 5448 for essential services out and confirmed by the state. Also working the AT&T contract for the cell tower. They got us over a new contract. It looked like they changed the numbers, so we're looking at they're wanting to pay us more in the beginning and then decrease the month. So we're looking at that right now. Just a reminder that Gleaner's Food Bank will be at the Grace Lutheran Church on 32 Mile Road, 1 to 3 p.m. on Wednesday, July 27th and August 24th. Fresh produce, dry goods, and proteins were specified. So if you need that assistance, 1 to 3 on the 27th and August 24th. Next month's meeting, there'll be a special events permit coming up for Harvest Days, the closure of North Main. Couple reminders, political signs, I know it's this time of the year, but there are no more than 3 political signs on every household, not going over 16 square foot in total, and all signage will be removed out of the easement if placed there. That also goes for all the contractor signs that go in to try to make sure that they're inside the sidewalk. Also, just a little tidying up type of stuff. The easements are still the property owner's responsibility, so people can take weed whips to either theirs or other people's locations that help out, especially around street signs, telephone poles, maybe make everything look a little bit more nice. And again, please make sure to clean up after your pets.
All I have to ask is, there was some complaints and some problems with the firework fallout after the fireworks of the 4th of July, so just please be courteous to your neighbors and make sure your fireworks aren't falling on their roofs or in their yard, and if they do, clean it up. We don't want anything catching on fire, obviously, with their roofs. I hate to see that go away, but that's it. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda with any additions or deletions, or as presented?
So moved.
You got support, right?
I'll support.
Oh, I don't know, I didn't hear it.
No.
Oh, shoot, I skipped, I'm sorry, I skipped public forum. Well, I'll go back to it.
Anybody for public?
Huh?
Nobody for-
Well, I already read it off, so
Alright.
just,
Melzon and Edwards?
Yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I'm gonna jump back one, public forum. This is time for the public that has any comments to be made. This is now the time. Please keep it to 5 minutes and please be courteous to others. No one? Okay. That's why I skipped it. Old business, fire hall easement, I think we just received that tonight when we got here.
I don't know if Mark had time to review it.
I did. When the gentleman that is purchasing the fire hall, he had a mortgage survey done, Mr. Lundquist, and the mortgage survey indicated that there may be some encroachment by the building, the fire hall that he's purchasing, onto the alley. That would be on the north side. And he's concerned about that, and the village should be concerned about it as well. And so what I discussed with his son, who is also an attorney, is that he should get a description, a physical meets and bounds description of the encroachment. And my recommendation to the council will be not to convey title to that, but to give Mr. Lundquist a permanent easement for that portion where the encroachment occurs. The building isn't going away. You're not gonna move the building. The encroachment's about 5.5 feet, a little over 5.5 feet. You're not gonna peel 5.5 feet of bricks or cinder blocks off that north wall. I don't recommend that you vacate any portion of the alley. That creates another set of circumstances that I don't think are beneficial to the village. And the simple solution is to convey the title to the described property, the north half of Lot 5, and with that conveyance to provide a permanent easement which is specifically described. And that's my recommendation. I don't believe that you have to rebid this or go through the motions again. You had already adopted an ordinance that allowed for the private sale, so you followed the law as far as that goes. I think this is in the nature, while it's important, is in the nature of a housekeeping matter because you're conveying or selling what you intended to sell.
Did you discuss this with his son then, the lawyer?
I did, and
they felt what?
they, in fact, well, Mr. Lundquist had this more specific and comprehensive survey done based on the mortgage survey, and he did that at his expense. I spoke with him this afternoon, the purchaser, the elder Mr. Lundquist. He came into my office, dropped this off. He also had spoken to his personal attorney about it, a gentleman whom I know, and both his son and this other lawyer who has represented Mr. Lundquist both agreed that this is appropriate, and so he's agreeable to it.
Would they be using that easement for parking?
No,
The building goes on
the
our
building's
property.
on it.
The building's on the easement.
The building was built 5 foot onto the encroached 5
That's
feet.
what we envisioned to sell. And
Yes.
it's
I see
never
what you're saying.
been,
I thought it was
been that way
out
for
here.
Right.
20 years.
You're-
which is-
Right, you're giving them more than, you're giving him more than you thought you had to, but you're not giving him any more than you intended to sell and he expected to buy.
Right, and so the easement would go to the building and other owners down the road?
Yeah,
And
that's
then
my
if the
question,
building
too.
was gone 100 years from now, would we still have rights then? Is that how it?
Well, it's an easement, so the village would continue to own the property in what is called fee. You would have ownership interest of that portion, and whoever acquired the title subsequently would have the ability to use that 5.5 feet. But you're not giving up title, but you are giving up exclusive possession of that portion.
So if the building changes hands over the time period, then
Or
it's what
was
it's
gone.
saying.
Or-
It's still in the building's possession. As far as the
It's gonna,
approach.
that easement is gonna benefit that property no matter who owns it.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second. As
Approve the
Council
easement
ordered it.
as legally described.
convey.
Get the permanent encroachment.
And just addressing Ms. Malzahn's concern about cash flow, when I talked to Mr. Lundquist, he's ready to close, he's ready to write the check. So that money will be coming to the village. I don't know if we'll be able to do it in the next few days, but it's not gonna take long. He's ready to go. So that, based on the sale price, that money will be coming to the village.
Good.
And there are no expenses to the village. The way it was offered, as is, where is, if he wants title insurance, whatever he wants, he's paying for it. He paid for the survey. The village has not incurred any expense with respect to that.
You want me to roll it, or you want me
Yeah, go ahead, roll that.
Edwards?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Melzan?
Yes?
President Sigel?
Yes. Moving on, new business, the office public request for parking lot for the Peach Festival. I think it's the same as it's always been. I make it to approve as.
I'm here again about the request for parking spaces over the Peach Festival to house our refrigerated trailer, same as it's been in the past.
This is the same spot it was last year, right?
This, I actually put in here the spot that it was the prior year in front of the dumpster corral. We had a few issues last year. People actually physically picked up the ramp and parked their vehicles there. They actually physically picked it up and moved it so we couldn't get the food off of the truck, and parked vehicles right next to the truck. Probably should have went to the police station to have them removed, but at 11 o'clock, midnight, when you're scrambling, it was.
Discount towing at that time.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I still have some concern as far as discussion.
Discussion.
On the table. Everybody got the letter from Glenn saying that noise could be a concern. Last year, we asked that it be moved back because he has an outside patio and a balcony where he seats his patrons, and I'm assuming everybody else got it. He emailed it to everybody, so he has some concern there. I also had some concern now that we have Bon Appetito open across the way. They obviously have limited parking too, and taking up those that are almost directly in front of their business seems a little unfair. So the back
I think
corner
that
of
the
that
back corner
parking
would be
lot.
more in front of theirs than this.
We kind of made this situation when we took away the alley. So we're in complying with,
I don't believe that's the case.
the alley was used at the time for their storage, their bringing in and out of trucks like that.
We
How was
still
it
offer,
used?
right.
I mean, it was used by the businesses
No,
there.
I'm just saying, how was it used?
It was used by the businesses there.
But what
Correct?
did they put on the alley?
Well, they bring the trucks
All our
in.
deliveries were,
They would come in and out, correct? So now that they're looking
all the
to
maintenance, anytime
house the
somebody had
trailer.
to come to repair
No,
anything.
well, I mean, this
Yeah.
is for Peach Fest, because in the history where it used to be as a refrigerator, I think it was at Mr. Trickett's house. And you used to bring a van from the house and bring it up through the alley with the van and make your deliveries that way. I think that's how it was done. And then when the alleyway was changed over, kind of as olive branch, I think the board gave you an option, because when we first talked about it, we talked about having a parking space that would be reserved, that you could block off and take your van in and out right to your back door, probably another 10 feet away from where it used to be with the alley. That's what I recall.
But as you can see, they actually picked up the ramp and moved it to
And I
park. They
think
would
that could-
definitely do that with the parking space. You can
Yeah.
see at Peach
And I-
Festival time, they're not very cooperative with parking.
And they could do that actually where you put it, if you put it in closer, they could do that there as well. I mean, somebody's gonna have a few drinks, I would suspect, or whatever, and go and move it. They could move that any place that's in the parking lot. And I would call the police, and I would have them towed away. So,
We also did offer last year to, hold one of the parking spaces through cones or roping off whatever needed to be done, so that that van could have access to the back door, basically, right outside, without the whole refrigerator truck being parked there taking up the 4 or 5 spaces. I think Glenn mentioned to me that he uses the handicap or the fire lane that's there for his extra time deliveries. I mean, I don't know if that's an option or not for you.
I think out of respect to the outdoor patio for youngers, you gotta consider that, and what you mentioned about the restaurant.
And it is
I-
noisy,
I-
I've sat there before, and it
Yeah,
is, it's
absolutely, we
disruptive.
understand, and we'd be willing to put it back where it was last year, that's not a problem.
I didn't know we put it in a different spot last year, I'm sorry.
We put
I
it
thought
in-
this was the same as
We put,
last
remember we
year.
went over, that we were gonna use the fire hall, but it was 6 inches
Too
too
short.
short. And then the second one was.
I could support where it was last year. I would have a
I'm sorry, I
problem
thought it
with
was, yeah. I
So you
didn't
wanna change the
realize we
motion?
changed it. Yeah. We- Yes, just really,
Chuck, you got anything to say
rescind that
about it?
motion.
You got anything to say about it?
The same thing we've been discussing for the last 7 years. The alley should have never been blocked off. And we just had an incident with, had pizza would go down, so we had build-ons. So I put 2 white buckets out there to save a parking spot. Went in there to check out, came right back out, and the buckets are kicked away and the car's parked there. So what do you want me? You want me to get in a fight with a customer? And I don't know if it was my customer, Coney Island customer, Younger's customer, Italian restaurant. So your theory of having a parking spot, yeah, I could see it coming every beach festival I
Yeah, they don't, the people from out of town don't, you know, I understand because parking is limited, but they,
Oh, I feel your pain, because
Yeah,
I have the
they don't
same
wanna
issue with
cooperate,
parking,
yeah.
yeah, with people taking our posted spots all the time. So I'm not saying that we don't have some compromise, but again, the back parking lot seems at least a little bit more fair to the other
Rescind that.
businesses.
We gotta vote on the
Rescind that
motion itself.
and- Yeah, rescind the motion on the floor and then remake the motion for,
Okay.
Where it was last year.
Rescind the motion and then make a motion to allow the refrigerator truck on the parking lot where it was located last year.
last year.
On Rawls, right, so it's on Rawls and Lafayette, right?
In the lot though, yeah, just in the back corner.
Who's support?
Didn't you need an extra spot or something for them to get it in there?
Yeah.
And then we opened that up, back
yeah,
up,
what we
right?
did was blocked off that whole row so that they could back in there. And then we opened up what could be as soon as they were in. And
That's
that
what I
comes on
thought.
Wednesday, so it doesn't interfere with the actual days of the beach.
So it's a few
festival.
more spaces initially, but
Just that morning,
Yeah.
we can't unfortunately dictate exactly when they come, but they come throughout the day on Wednesday.
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I opposed it. I like the plan that they presented, so I'm not agreeing with going with last year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
2, special events permit for Starkweather Alley. Dave, they want to have a graduation party. I didn't see any alcohol in it when I looked through it.
We won't have any alcohol outside. If we have any alcohol at all, we'll keep it inside Starkweather. But we would like to block off the alleyway and set up a canopy or possibly 2, and some tables and chairs and stuff for people to sit outside.
I'd make a motion to approve as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Good salesman.
that was easy.
Yeah, easy's good.
Mr. Petrino, you're up.
Where do you wanna, straight up?
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna sit by Zach.
Whatever you guys prefer.
Am I voting alone?
I've moved this.
Is this, we're gonna turn this or? They wanna get it on camera too or?
You're good. All right, everybody has it printed in their packet, so it's gonna get small on the screen. The screen's more of a cheat sheet for me, and so others can follow along maybe as I speak.
For
those that want to follow along, you may have to tilt your head a little bit. Couple of updates on the projects that the village has me working on. There's actually 3 projects that 2 months ago, when I was in front of the board last, that I was asked to go forward with, and received instruction again last month from the board when I was not at the meeting. First is professional services contracts, labor contracts, and then a multi-year budget tool. In your packet, I've got kind of an update on all 3. This is the same slide I presented a couple months ago when I said what I would be performing for the village. You'll note I've kind of stamped them complete. Labor contracts, there's nothing further for me to be doing on that unless I receive direction differently from staff or the board itself. I provided the comps for the other communities, reviewed those comps with the board and with Mike, and so now it's in your hands, it sounds like. Professional services contracts, I provided a model professional services RFP for auditor. That's in fact been posted on Mitten. I'll report a little bit on that this evening. And then multi-budget year tool, I'm happy to let you know that a first draft has been complete, and we'll go over that this evening. So professional services contracts. The model's complete, the audit services RFP is complete. Mike posted it out on Mitten. And so it's out there for an August 1st deadline. Was that the date posted? After your last meeting, I was also asked to take a look at how other communities contract for their professional services. So I developed a quick survey, and I have some results from that survey this evening. I can make the entire survey available, and will after this meeting, through a link to anybody that would like to grab a link to the survey that was sent. I only sent it to general law villages. There may be some on here that I missed. I appreciated receiving the list and identifying the general law villages, since I wasn't particularly familiar with them. I identified who the chief administrative officer was, whether it was a village manager or a village clerk. The population of interest, Romeo's the largest of the general law villages identified. And so that was the list. The bold ones on here, it's probably easier to see in my written documents, are the ones that actually provided the response in the 2 weeks that they were provided.
24 of them? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I think maybe sent to 24. If you go to the next page, you'll see each that responded and what their response was. Romeo was one of, I had asked Mike, and Mike did complete the survey for Romeo, so your results are in here with the 9. So it's a total of 9 that I had responses from, 8 plus Romeo. The first one of the questions was, do you have a written policy for professional service provider appointments? It's about half and half. 5 said yes they do, 4 do not. And you can see kind of the list in your packet, what each said. These were choices for them to select, so obviously some of them are the same. Obviously Stevensville, they have an ordinance. They do it by ordinance. Lakewood Club does it by resolution. And you can see each of the responses for each of the general law villages. The next 3, we asked specifically how they appoint the position of village attorney, village engineer, and auditor. You can see that the 7 of the 9 appoint the village attorney by the board. 1, Romeo, appoints by the general law village president, and then 1 community does not have a village attorney at all. And again, below are the specific responses from each of the entities. I rolled them up to be 7, depending on some have, for instance, Lexington, a candidate is appointed by the village board. Lakewood Club, candidate is recommended by the village president, and the village board may appoint the recommended candidate or select another candidate. So both of those are considered appointed by the board. They have different variations. Some of them, for instance, Constantine, a candidate's recommended by the village manager in their case, but the board may appoint recommended candidate or select another. And I forget which one.
Wouldn't that be a different than the 3 up there, or appointed by the board? It would be other? Because it is still an appointment by the village manager or appointment by the president.
Well, for instance, there were choices appointed by the village president, appointed by the village manager. In this case, they chose to say that the candidate is recommended by the manager, but the board may appoint that candidate or any other candidate. Certainly, that is a board appointment if they have an option to select someone entirely different from the person that's recommended. The next is village engineer. This one, 4 appointed by the board, again, similar as Mike pointed out in the last slide. There's different variations of how we get to that board appointment, but the board having the ultimate authority of the appointment of 4 of them. Romeo, appointed by general law village president, and then 4 communities either didn't have an engineer or it was unclear how they appointed. For instance, Barron Springs, I may not be pronouncing that right, their response was, have been our engineers for years. I'm not sure how they were first appointed many years ago, so that went into the no engineer or unclear. And then finally, we come to auditor. This one was pretty clear. Everybody has to have one. Everybody needs an independent audit. 8 appointed by the board in some variation, or in some variant appointed by the board, and 1 appointed by the president of the community. So again, I can make the raw data available, the survey questions themselves. I had a number of other survey questions in there just to gather some background data, but certainly you're welcome to that information. So we're done with kind of the first phase of the professional services request from the community. So I can continue to update the survey results if they're received. I doubt they will be because I had to remind them a couple times just to get the 9 that I did receive. But if I get them, I'll continue to update them. It's done through Google Forms, so anybody that would like access to it, it's simple to go exactly to the form I used. Next in the process, if the board would like, if Mike would like, I can assist during the RFP for audit service process selection in any way asked. I can begin drafting the engineering services RFP, and if you'd like to consider a policy or resolution for professional service purchasing, I can certainly assist the village attorney if requested in sample resolutions or ordinances, either from other communities or communities that I've worked with. I kind of lead that. If you want to dog-ear it in the corner and go back to it, that would be direction that I would ask of the board either this evening or at your pleasure on the general services, professional services purchasing.
What,
Sure.
can I get some clarification on what the difference is between an actual ordinance that would be written versus a written policy? What would be contained within a written policy that would allow us the latitude to do that versus what's in the general law handbook?
I don't think you can. I think you have to do it either by resolution or by ordinance, because that's what the statute says. So the policy, I don't know how Mr. Vitrano is using the word policy, but narrowly speaking, I would say you do it, again, under the terminology, the text of the statute, you either do it by resolution or ordinance, one or the other. And either is permissible. One's not more sacrosanct than the other.
I would concur, and I think probably policy and resolution would be, in my mind, one and the same, and maybe the villages view them one and the same. Often a resolution is proposed, and anything you vote on, and the village attorney certainly will correct me, it can be considered a resolution that you approve during any meeting. So if it's a policy and the top says policy instead of resolution,
Okay.
if it's during that meeting and it's approved and that's the policy of the community or the resolution of the community, an ordinance, you would actually, if you've got a codified ordinance book, it would go into that codification with whatever advertising that you're required in order to amend an ordinance going forward. Certainly deferring to the village attorney, but the ordinance would require more process, I think, to amend, as opposed to a more fluid resolution or
Like,
policy.
for instance, what we have, I think we have a purchasing that it's $1,500, and I think that's just a policy that we put together by resolution. Then there's another thing that we said we would have a budget prepared by May 15th or whatever, and that is in the ordinance. So one is more of a permanent official record that actually gets published in our ordinances.
Well, your
and the other
ordinances,
one-
your ordinances have to be published, and you have a codification, you have an ordinance book. Your resolutions are permanent in the sense that they're included, you made resolutions tonight to do certain things. Those are in the minutes,
Right.
and those are kept at the village office, so there's a permanency there as well. It's just the.
Another resolution that comes out to change it.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You can, I don't know if this helps, but you can rescind or change a resolution by a resolution. You can only change an ordinance by an ordinance, so you can't change an ordinance by a resolution.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so if you dog ear that one and give me direction at your pleasure, I would appreciate it. Multi-year budget tool. We've completed the first draft. The tools for specifically village staff, but elected officials could certainly play with it. It's a fluid model designed in Excel. And it's really designed to project what today's decisions and economic conditions mean 5 years out. It's only as good as the data that you can load to it, though. I can do anything you'd like me to do based on 2004 through today data. I can project things as much as I want, but the power is really from the staff that they can go through and they'll see things in line items that I won't see. I have a note in one of the slides. I don't know until I look back, oh, that's a 1-year anomaly. If I go and project on that line item based on a 1-year anomaly and I'm telling it to grab the 5-year average, that can really throw your 5 years. So a really important step in this, and you'll see later, is for staff to go line item by line item through it and say, okay, what is the projection model we should be using? And I'll show you that in a second. It's a 5-year forecast from 2016. The current model, actually the model that I have clipped in your packet is the 2016 budget and 2017 projected. Mike sent me late last week the budget that was approved for 17 and your 16 actual. I have updated that already in the model, but of course the slides that you have don't reflect that. There's 5 options for projection, and we can have 5, we can have 55, but the more you add, the more complex the model gets. 5 may not be right, you may need 6 or 7 once Mike and staff take a look, but what it does, it will take the average of the prior 5 years to tell you what your next year is, and then that'll project out for 5, the average of the prior 3, inflation, and we can set that as a percentage of whatever we think inflation is going to be over the next 5 years. Customer or custom is better. There's a blank for a percentage, whatever we think. We want to know what our budget, if everything goes up 2% every year, all year, every item goes up 2%, what does that look like? And then the last, we have an option to say previous. It's whatever last year's was. Carry that number forward. Now it's important to note that you do this by a line item. So on wages, I can use a custom number of what I think wages are going to go up each year for 5 years, and I can keep fuel at inflation, and I can put, I don't know, pesticide application if you do that, same as previous, because I think that'll be flat. So each of those line items are on their own. It's not a mass assumption. All right. I think I reviewed that fine. All right, so I did go through the general fund and looked at every single line item and made some educated assumption to it. It will be much more effective when staff can do that for the general fund, validate either what I picked or change it, and then do that for every single fund. So every fund is in the model. I've only customized the general fund on a line item basis so far. And apologize to the audience, especially those on TV. There's no way you're going to be able to see this, but it's in your packet. This is every fund that you track in your general ledger or your community's books for your community. And we have data in here from 2004 and then projected to 2020. Green is revenue, blue is expenditures. Each one of these expands. So in your general fund expenditures, if you go to the next page, if you clicked on that in Excel, it would open up and you would see each department. So now each department line item by year. If you click on any of those departments, in this case I clicked on treasurer, that'll blow up and you'll see those details. This is the lowest level of detail that the village actually tracks in your budget. You see to the left is your general ledger number. For those like Mike, that means a lot. That is the coding system that the state of Michigan says that we have to use to code our expenditures. Doesn't mean much to the rest of the world, but we're down to that level at this point. You see I've got actuals posted on here. To the left it's hidden, but that goes back to '04. Projected to 2021. To the far right, you can see the kelp code. And that's what I said, okay, I'm going to custom anything that has to do with wages on a percentage increase. On pension contribution, I'm going to say it's the average of the past 5 because that's highly dependent on market performance. Fringe benefits I did custom. Office supplies and computer supplies, I said, you know, that's a little more up to date. I'm going to do the average of the past 3, etc. Capital outlay, I used the previous. So each of those in the yellow there in Excel, you click on it and it's a drop down and you pick one of the 5. So you really, it's limiting in that sense that you can't use the custom code. Now, remember, it's in Excel. So if Mike knows something very specific in capital outlay that will occur in 2020, he just clicks on that cell and overrides the formula and says, boom, we're going to spend $3,000 in 2018 because I know we need a new computer system in that year. That goes into the model and that feeds your 5-year projection. Because it's Excel, you can do any graphical that you'd like. Again, I apologize for the size for those trying to see it in the audience. For the board members, you have it in your packet. This is just a simple revenue to expense bar graph from 2004 through 2021. Very simple. It shows your past, your actuals, your budget, your proposed going forward. As I mentioned, that one, wow, that really spiked to me. I didn't know what that was. I looked back at the data, saw that there was one sale of an asset at $950,000. So because it's linked to the Excel model, you can quickly see where those anomalies are. Again, I need to feed in, or I have fed in the 2016 budget, actual and the 2017 budget. These are then what those projections are, revenue versus expenditures. And in those future years, based on this model and everything that I've set up just for the general fund, you're pretty balanced, but you run about a $50,000 deficit year over year in that projected 5-year model. Now, once I plug in the 17 numbers for your budget, I looked at it again and it's still running about the same deficit. But once you go in and you change those variables,
What number did you say?
50,000. So it's nearly balanced, it's $3 million. So if you go in and change 2 of the variables, and instead of say average of 5 years, or more likely, Mike will go in and say, you know, that's not going to go up 2% a year every year. I have that pretty fixed because it's a contract of some kind. Or I know something that James doesn't know because I have the information, and you switch those to previous, or you switch those to something else, this could balance out pretty quickly going forward. But you have to validate that column that says what are the variables you're going to project. You can be ultra conservative, you can be ultra optimistic. The model doesn't care, it's agnostic. It will simply take the data and take what you feed it and spit out the information. And because your budget will be balanced, that year will often have heavy sway in future years. It's not an actual, it's a balanced budget. So if you clicked back and said previous to each, you're going to show yourself balanced all the way through. Or if you click 2% increase on all revenues and all the expenses, you're going to show balanced going through. That's where, I focused a bit on expenses, but on the revenue side, maybe I was too conservative at saying what your property values are going to increase. That's
decrease.
certainly, or decrease. That certainly is probably the most important variable in this entire thing is what you're going to project your property values are going to do. And if all of us have a crystal ball or any of us can get that right, we probably aren't in this room this evening.
Well, I would have loved to see Washington Township side of the Village of Romeo increase, but it didn't, it decreased.
Yeah, and so you can go in and make that modification. And if you say it's gonna be flat and I said it's gonna increase by 2%, well, that spread just got worse. Or there was something I thought an expense would continue that you know that expense isn't going to continue. I was aware of some of your cable television discussions, so I think I got that right, but that could very well change a ton of that projection on that line item, that expense. So the key here is that the model exists, garbage in, garbage out, okay? The model exists if you take the time and project each line item to the best of your ability, year over year. The beauty of it for staff is the 18 budget is done. You can modify through the year on that projected number and say, okay, now I got more information. I'm gonna go in and adjust it.
Save me 3 months of work there.
Well, only to the extent that you have to look at, just like you did, you have to look at every line item. And as you get more information for each line item, it still needs to get touched. It's still, I used a model similar to this. It still took 6 months to do that next year's budget because every time you're looking at it, you're more informed on what that projection is going to show you. But the value, in my opinion, is having it all laid out in Excel, not trapped in a proprietary software in a way that allows you to see it going forward. It also gives you the freedom without the proprietary software to run any report that you want or any graph that you want. Even if you're not real familiar with Excel, enough people are that it's pretty easy to go get the information. I just threw 2 more up here for fun. One is you could start looking at your percentage by department as you're making your decisions. This is 15 to 16. In this case, your police department expenses were a little bit down 15 to 16, your fire was a little bit up, and your transfers out were a little bit up. But because it's in that model, most anything you would like to see year over year is pretty easy to pull out. So, how do we get this to completion? And I can stop saying, if you and we can. I've got the actual figures from 16 from Mike, that's been inserted. I've got the 17 budget, that's been inserted. The next step would be to have just some basic showing at a much deeper level for staff of the model, and for the staff to then go through each line item based on their knowledge for the entire, all the funds. At the end of that, then you want to re-review the 5-year projection and say, okay, now that we've actually got more knowledge into this thing, what does it look like? And probably the last piece of information to add, I'd recommend you add one more sheet to this that has the fund balance for each fund. Because if you tie that together, then if you are running a deficit in a fund, it may be okay if you plan to spend fund balance. But you don't know that unless we feed the fund balance amount into the model. But to me, that's the very last step. Once staff gets a little comfortable with the model, once we are able to review the 5-year budget projection, and then we can add the fund balance pretty simply. So, from my perspective, I don't necessarily need any direction from the board. I know Mike is trying to set up an appointment for me to meet with him. And I understand that the tax bills going out, as earlier in your discussion, is way more a priority than what your budget is in 2021. But I hope to be able to meet with Mike and whoever he says and his staff soon, so that we can continue moving forward with this and have that final product available. I think that's my last slide. I'd be happy to answer any questions on any part of my presentation. And certainly I'd ask for direction on the items as I noted in the one slide on professional services. We can either go lights, or if you want to keep this on.
I have a couple comments if we're gonna. This is something that I have looked at to do at least a 3-year budget productions since I've ever been on this board. And it's something that is common in business just in general. And I would say most municipalities do that, and we didn't. When we, a year ago, had SEMCOG come in here and working with a similar spreadsheet, they were able to show us that we were trending to where if we keep on the path that we're going, we're gonna be in trouble. And as a board, it's the 7 of us that are responsible for our budget. And for us to be going year by year and spending what we take in and just figure it out each year, I'm not comfortable with that all of a sudden there can be a oh wow situation. Again, it's not gonna bring more revenue in, but it can control how we spend and are being fiscally responsible. So I think this is great that we've gone to the step and we have this model, but if this isn't accepted and received and done, it's like anything in a management, if you can't have it actually be executed from this point forward, then it's not gonna happen and it was a waste of time. And so what I'd like to see, if the board wants to adopt and work with this and see some value in this, is identify a person in the office that does know Excel, is willing to take on the challenge, with Mike's direction, with the different departments, but be a person that is in charge and accountable for this and be able to own it and take care of it. Because it's not going to be you, Mike. You got enough on your plate, and
Well,
if you don't believe in it,
the
it's
thing
not going to
about-
happen.
I'm fine with that, like I've said in the past, but there's so many different variables. Would you have thought that the Washington Township taxes would have went down this year? You really would?
No, I'm saying I
mean,
understand
it's
that
just
things are
there's so,
changing.
yeah, there's so many different variables from the state or wherever, and I understand, I mean, we could plug in as much as we want to the system, which is fine. I like the projection, it's a good projection system.
Because
Yeah.
either
It's such a.
things are going to change.
Yeah.
So is it a worthwhile thing in your opinion, or is it a waste of time because things change? Is it,
No,
3
it's
months
just
to
a-
get this set up?
Implementation is gonna be either through Jan and Donna at the office, because they're the ones that input everything. They're the key punchers and all that type of stuff. Donna does the bills, but Jan does most of the bookkeeping, so, and they're both quite capable of all the internet stuff.
Well,
And I
Excel
do,
is
and I
what-
work it. I work it a
Excel
little
is
bit
what
of
they
it,
need
too,
to know.
so- And, yeah, Excel's, yeah.
But I
Excel's-
mean, what do you think as far as identifying a person that will own this? Work with James, make sure they understand it.
We can
and be our
identify
point
one or
person.
two, we can ask them to see what the, like I said, you're gonna meet with the staff and see who would.
But I'm saying pick
Capable.
somebody that the board even knows who that is.
I don't know which one would be more capable.
Well, I'm not asking for an answer right now. What I'm saying is, would you agree that we should identify a person that would own this? Because that would be my recommendation, that there's somebody in office, and it's not something you're gonna have an answer right now, but the purpose would be, with the help of James, to get this implemented. Because what I think, this is all great, and we see the projections, and James has put through the work to this point, but if we don't own it and garbage in, garbage out, if it's not taken seriously and moved forward, then we're just all wasting our time. And I think it is an important thing to have. And again, the numbers change, but at least we can see how we're tracking and doing projections. The big thing is, we know healthcare is gonna be going up. There's a certain percentage, and that's something that's gonna be going up. Other little anomalies are revenue from tickets. That was like half of what we thought, so that could be the anomaly that you spoke to. But those fit revenue. So there is gonna be changes, but if we can have the best crystal ball, if you will, of where we're heading as a board member and being responsible for our budget, I think it's
Especially now
important.
that we have multiple year contracts in place, so we know what those marked changes will be, so.
And it's new to us, but it's not new to other municipalities and business in general. It's the norm.
Tell me what you guys want me to do.
And James, you're also saying bring staff up to par with everything and get them functional within so we're not spending any extra money, correct?
Yeah,
Because-
absolutely.
so-
This model is intended to be turned over, if what I've used this model, or have I experienced this in the past, this model's turned over to staff, and maybe annually or once every 2 or 3 years, you want somebody to take a look at it, and again, because it can be so changed, audit it and say, okay, yeah, all the cells are still working, everything's still good. Once a year, particularly in the Village of Romeo, I would probably recommend a couple of hours of time from an outsider, me or someone else who's very familiar with Excel, and just look at it once.
So we have the staff in place, we're bringing the staff up to par, basically what Mike's saying here. I understand what you're saying, ID somebody for this, but I was listening to him also. We have the people in place, so let's use the ones that we have in place. That's what Mike's trying to tell you. He has 2 competent people at his service right now, and according to what he's saying there, we use them to get the program implemented.
Well, it wasn't talking about hiring somebody.
Well,
I was talking about just identifying.
We're done spending dollars. We're done doing that. We have to use the people that we have in order to bring this program up to
I
where
agree.
we're at. So
I agree.
Mike was trying to tell you that he has the people already in place. That's
Is
the
that
part
what
I
you're
picked
saying?
up. That's the part I just picked up from him. He has the people. He has to bring them online. He's saying the same thing. He has to bring everybody online.
In
So I
Bob's
under-
concern, in
so
my
I
concern.
understand
right.
what you're trying to say here, but let's these guys work together to bring everybody up to par.
I just don't know if
Nothing to talk.
Which-
Let's
who-
just do it.
if Jan would be the
Yeah.
best inputter,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
would Donna, because she's dealing with all the building.
And I would talk to both of them,
So
and
then
see,
that's
and
where
maybe it's even
that's where I'm saying.
with them, but all I'm saying is, somebody,
Because we don't wanna have 2 people doing the same work, but sometimes. they
No,
I think
do,
that's
but-
what their plan is.
Although
listen.
it's good to have them cross-trained though.
Well, no,
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that they'll have to,
but I would just, if I were, running this, I would say, okay, this is somebody, I would pick somebody, and I would talk to a few people, and make a decision of, hey, we'd like to have somebody own this and be responsible for that.
Let him run his
And
staff.
find somebody that wants to do that, and then move forward. That way, there's some accountability, and the person knows that they're accountable for having this inputted. I think it's just a good practice, so that's just my recommendation, and I've explained it as
I think he has an
clearly
excellent staff
as I
in that
can.
office that
And then,
can come on board, come online,
Like I said,
exactly what
once
Jim's
we-
saying.
Wednesday, both Jan, both Jan and Donna are in on Wednesdays.
Mhm.
But then it's off on Friday. Donna's out on Friday, and Jan isn't. But then Donna's in on Monday, and Jan isn't. So it's one of those scenarios of trying to fit.
I would recommend
But-
that you set up an appointment with James, that you need to do anyway, and have Donna and Jan there, and the 4 of you guys figure out who that is. My recommendation would be to have somebody own it though.
Are you putting that in a motion, or
Let
we
this
just
man work
talk?
his staff.
Because
All right.
my concern is that this budget model has been done for weeks. It's been sitting there for weeks with a request for a meeting which hasn't been accommodated. And I get it that you were wrapping up year-end stuff and
Are you
and
talking to
dealing.
me, or what are you talking
I'm just sort of
to? Or
making a
just
statement.
talking-
I'm just making, I'm making a statement
Just making sure.
that this has been done, and I wanna make sure, like Bob, that if we're gonna do this, that it's embraced, that it's actually implemented, and it's made a priority, so that if you're gonna assign somebody, it's their job, and we can hold them accountable for doing it.
This is only done last week.
This model was done
Last week.
earlier than that.
When was this done?
With the
Completed,
request
Jim?
for-
I'm sorry.
I'd have to go back to my email, Mike, but I think I had asked for that meeting a couple of weeks ago.
When was
So-
it done?
The model?
Completed Last week.
Was it done before our
What
last
you
meeting?
presented today was done last week.
Oh, no, it was completed.
The implementation of the numbers that we gave you last week.
Yes,
came
thank
in
you.
last week.
I will clarify to your
Thank-
question. The model itself was completed with 2016 budget and 2017 projected, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. Mike provided me the 2016 actuals and the 2017 budget last week, and that's when it was updated. But the scheduling of the meeting and the training, that can go forward whenever
I mean,
availability is made.
I think these two are perfect. We've hired him to do a job. The people hired him to do a job. I think you guys can make this happen. The staff that you have
I
in
think it'd go
place.
quick.
Okay.
I just- Right now with the, I mean, for the timing of everything, I mean, from union negotiations, getting the budget done, year-end stuff, I mean, now it opens up a little bit.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we ask James to complete the other two RFPs to get those ready to go up to Met. And if it needs to be another, so I would have that motion, that we would go ahead and have those updated.
Engineer and what, attorney?
Yep.
Still coming out of the regular $5,000
I'll
that we got
support that.
budgeted?
Was that all?
Mm-hmm. I support it.
Roll? Roll it? Edwards.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Fowler.
No.
Melzar.
Yes?
President Siegel.
No.
Okay.
What's your second motion?
That passed. So we are gonna bid out some of our contracts.
Waste of time.
Okay, I'd like to make another motion that we would ask James to put together policy language for a resolution or an ordinance, if that's recommended, for us to put together a policy for our bidding. Like, for instance, that we would bid those every 3 years, that type of thing, and to have James put together some, with Mr. Clark, some language for us to consider for policy.
We've got to
or
have, it's not like
resolution.
the first time it's ever
You're
came
done.
up. There's gotta be, I mean,
No, that's what
for
I'm
me
saying.
not going through 175 years of minutes, I mean, there's a bidding policy?
Yeah.
Or are you just looking for a bidding policy for president's appointments?
No, just for us to have a policy. For instance, there are ones that are in place that they will bid out their contracts every 3 years and have a provision that they might make an extension for 2 years. That's what I know a few municipalities do. So we would have a written way. We aren't, necessarily gonna bid out every year, but we would put a policy in place that we are going to bid our contract services.
Also to bid out contracted services.
Right, would, James, is that, am I missing anything as far as?
I think to Mike's question, it would apply to professional services, whatever purchasing applies to the other aspects of your purchasing, that would be something separate.
Did you say it'd be a couple policies?
Well, it'd be a single policy
And-
regarding your professional services.
And an ordinance change.
Or a resolution? A resolution to adopt it?
What do you want?
Just like we would have.
What do you want as your motion?
What I want is for James with Mr. Clark to come up with language for a policy, and whether we're gonna make that into a resolution or whether it needs to be an ordinance, to put that in for bidding out our professional services.
Professional services. Policy for bidding out professional services, that's your motion.
Just like we have a purchasing policy, we have a policy for our professional
These guys
services.
have to bid out everything they do.
You know?
We're saying we don't have to? Come on.
All the municipalities do this. 80% of them do, we don't. We need to start doing that, so that would be my motion.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Aye.
3-1, 3-2.
3-2.
Melvin, Edwards.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn?
Motion, second?
All in favor?
I like that, man.
Hold on.
Hey, what were you, Sue?